Okay, so here's a couple of things to know about oils. Number one, I've asked you to get two mediums. If you don't have them, there are variations that we can talk about, but I want to talk a little bit about both. So Gamsol is the same thing as turpentine or any other kind of like alcohol. If you open it up, it should be clear. Turpentine is similar. The nice thing about Gamsol, if you open it up and smell it, is that it has no odors. So it's what they call an odorless spirit. Turpentine is a much stronger smell, and it actually, as it evaporates into the air, it kind of leaves particles that aren't fantastic for you. So what I like about Gamsol is it's a fairly non-toxic product. Like I mean, I wouldn't drink it. I mean, once I took a sip of it because I was out at plein air painting and it was in a cup that was the same as the cup for my wine. Absolutely. But I spit it out immediately. Anyway, this is not something you want to ingest. And it's good for two things. We're going to use it to apply a base today, a thin oil base, which will dry quickly. So mostly oil doesn't dry for several days, which makes it tricky to work with because, you know, you can't put too much paint on. Things will get muddy fairly quickly. After we apply the base, you're going to use it to clean out your brushes. So you can, like I usually use one brush. I'm going to use, this is the brush I'm going to use. I'm going to ask you guys to use as thick a brush as possible. Definitely do not use a brush, I don't know, like this is too thin. You know what I'm saying? Unless you don't have anything thinner than this. You want like a thick brush. So what you can do is with your turpentine, if you're like switching colors, you can dip it in the turpentine in between your colors, and then you can take like a paper towel like this and squeeze it out and pull the color out. At the end, if you have any turpentine left over, you're going to pour it into a glass jar with a top, along with any other of the liquids that you use. So no turpentine, like no Gamsol, no turpentine should go down the sink afterwards. It's definitely not good for a water supply. So any questions about that before we go on?
I do. I didn't hear what that is.
This is Gamsol. It's like turpentine. Turpentine. So you're going to use it at the beginning. So just watch me, Jessica, as we go through the lesson. Like you'll see how to use it. Mm-hmm. And there are times when you have to stop using it. The thing about Gamsol is it's a paint stripper. So if you use it on top layers, it's going to pull paint off your painting, and that's not what you want to do.
Similar to just paint thinner?
It is paint thinner. Yeah, essentially that's what it is. It's an alcohol.
A bunch of paint thinner.
No, don't use paint thinner. Don't use paint thinner. That shit is terrible. Oh my God. All you have to do is smell it. Don't do that. This is a much more refined alcohol that's designed to work with paint. Okay. So don't think about using paint thinner or paint stripper, although it will act that way. Any other questions before I go on? So that's Gamsol.
You can use it over and over, right?
Well, so what's interesting is if you store like the extra Gamsol in your jar, you'll see that after a while the paint sediments will sift to the bottom, so they'll separate. It's just a thing, and so you can use the top layer that doesn't have paint sediment in it sometimes to begin your paintings with or to clean your brushes with.
But if I had a bigger bottle than one of these, then I would put it in another jar to use it.
Yeah. No, you could just use it from the jar, like the first jar. Just you want to be careful not to mix. These are good questions, so I'm glad you guys are asking these. But yeah, so what you'll see after a while is a sediment. I tend to mix mine. I'll put my other like things in there too, like Galkyd and Gamvar and other things. So mine is kind of like not pure turpentine, but if you just keep your Gamsol, if you just pour your extra Gamsol in a jar, and you let it sit, the sediments will sink, you'll see paint at the bottom, and then you'll see this clear layer at the top. So yeah, you could actually use that, totally. Any other questions before we go on? All right, so the other thing we might use today, I'm not even sure, we'll see how it goes, is something called Galkyd Light. If you don't have this, linseed oil can do some of the same things. Galkyd, so you know how you dip your brush in water when you're working with acrylic or watercolor to create a sort of smoother paint, right? A smoother, paint that will apply more quickly. You can use GalKid that way. You can use linseed oil that way too. The trick is GalKid will actually dry your painting a little bit faster. So I tend to always have a little bit on my palette, either in a little jar next to the Gamsol or even exactly on the palette, because I'll mix a tiny bit of it with my paint. And that will actually help it dry a little faster. So that is kind of helpful. Linseed oil will not help it dry faster. Linseed oil will actually help make it take a little longer to dry, but that's okay. I mean, it's very common for paintings to take, 3 or 4 days to dry between applications. So that's